What's going on YouTube? This is going to be a review for the Yongnuo 50mm f1.8 Mark II. So let's go ahead and get into it, starting off with price. I was only able to find this on both Amazon and B&H Photo. It was $99 on both of them. There is also an option for a white one through B&H.
How neat is that?
As far as the construction goes, it is fully plastic with a metal mounting ring. There is autofocus. There is no image stabilization. This 50mm f1.8 takes a 58mm filter. There is no weather sealing on the back. The autofocus and manual focus switch does lock the lens, so if you have it on autofocus, try not to force manual focus because you will wreck this lens. As for the weight, it is 6.1 ounces with both lens caps, the front and back lens cap on, and it weighs 5.1 ounces without the lens caps. Now, something I would like to mention really quick, holding this up next to the Yongnuo 50mm, the first version of this, you can notice that there is no metal mounting ring on the first version, and the second iteration gets a metal mounting ring. The aperture range on this lens is f1.8 to f22. As far as the minimum focusing distance goes, Yongnuo claims that it is 0.35 meters or 1.15 feet. And in my testing, it was around 13 and a quarter to 13 and a half. So kind of in between that quarter and half line. So it's a little bit false on the Yongnuo lens. So just take that into consideration. But I still think that this is a pretty reasonable focusing distance for such a cheap lens. Like I mentioned, as far as image stabilization goes, there is no image stabilization on this lens. So long story short, you just want to make sure that you have a fast shutter speed and you're holding this lens pretty steady because you will get some ghosting. Now, as far as the lens test goes, starting off at f1.8, there is some barrel distortion. It's not so bad that it would be super noticeable, even if you didn't have in-body correction or correcting it through Lightroom. There is definitely some chromatic aberration going on with this lens as well at f1.8. There seems to be a slight fuzziness. It's possibly from the chromatic aberration and the focus, and the corners look soft at f1.8. By f3.2, the image becomes sharper overall, and the chromatic aberration has disappeared at this point. By f5.6, the image overall is sharp corner to corner, and by f18, the image starts to soften due to diffraction. I will say, when this lens is wide open, it does appear to have some ghosting, which causes the image to look softer than they should, resulting in poor image quality in the center of the lens outward. This does clear up by stopping down to the aperture of around f2.5, so keep that in mind. This lens is somewhat decent for astrophotography if you are using a full frame camera, but something to keep in mind is you will have some purple color fringing around bright objects as well as halogens in the corner, so take that into consideration. As for bokeh, it is nice on close-up images, giving them some nice soft separation, but when using this lens wide and giving the subject more space, it almost makes the bokeh somewhat distracting in my opinion, as it tends to leave the bokeh with a more pronounced edges. I'm not sure exactly why. As for sunstars, you get a nice 14-point sunstar for long exposure, but they do take up a bit of blotchiness and aren't formed very well, leaving much to be desired in my honest opinion. Now, in my testing, this lens was fairly quiet for autofocusing compared to Yongnuo's original 50mm and their 35mm f2, so take that into consideration. I would say that this is probably more on par with the Canon 50mm. Now, I will say this, I'd noticed in my testing as well. For bright lights, it actually tends to work well against the bright lights if you are manually focusing on a spot. When you turn on autofocus and the lens hunts for its subject, you will notice some flaring coming off. But just keep in mind that this camera lens doesn't have a spot for a sun shield or a hood, so take that into consideration as well. Now, when you use this lens outside, there is nowhere to basically attach a lens hood to this, So take this into consideration. At certain angles, if the sun is in a certain position, you might get a little bit of sun flaring from that. As far as the autofocusing goes, on my Canon R5, it did fairly decently. There was some points where the lens seemed to want to hunt a little bit to find its subject. And my final thoughts. I will say for the price, this is a somewhat decent lens for the price compared to the Canon 50mm, which is basically $125. So you're saving yourself a little bit of money purchasing this lens. I think that this one is by far better than the original Yongnuo 50mm, as the image quality overall I think has sharpened up quite a bit. If you do use this lens, honestly, I would say to stop down at least to like an f2 or an f2.2 to kind of sharpen up that image in the middle. Other than that, I think if you were on a budget and you don't really have the money for the Canon, I think that this would be a decent option. I wouldn't say I would use this for long-term or even for professional or client work, as like I said, you basically have to stop this lens down to get it sharp in the center, and that kind of takes place around f2.5. There is a metal mounting ring. There is no weather sealing. You do have autofocus, which works fairly well. I wish I had an APS-C camera to test this on, but unfortunately I only have my Canon R5. But I will say this, if you are in the market for a 50mm and you're looking to purchase one of these, I honestly would say either buy a Canon 50mm used or save up a couple extra bucks and just go for the Canon. This one's not bad for anybody that is on a budget and just kind of wants a cheap walk around lens. It is light, so you don't really feel it. And if you're using this on an APS-C, you're going to be looking at around 80mm with the equivalent to a full frame. So take that into consideration as well. If you're using this on a full frame camera, I honestly would say probably choose a Canon 50mm or something a little bit different, like a Tamron or maybe even a Sigma. That's just my honest opinion. This does take some really nice photos, but I will say in all honesty that even with autofocus on, it feels like maybe this camera lens just kind of missed. And I don't know if it's because I attach it to the R5 or if the autofocus in this is just really that bad. For the most part, I would say the autofocus worked 90% of the time. Again, like I said, during my testing, I did notice that it would sometimes hunt, so it could be one of those things where it was hunting for focus and I just clicked the shutter button and it basically captured what was in the preview or the image. So take that into consideration as well. Other than that, I would say that this lens is good. For $100, I think that you can't go wrong. And if you're looking for a 35mm, I would say that their 35mm is honestly better than this 50mm, but 50s and 35s are different focal ranges, so take that into consideration. But honestly, if I were going to choose one for an APS-C, I would probably go with the 35mm, as I felt that that was a probably better option compared to this 50mm Mark II, the original 50mm, and the 35 f2. If you guys like this video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, give it a like. If you didn't like this video, also give it a thumbs up. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons. I'm Jordan, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.